Good morning, church. Can everyone hear me? All right. Good morning. How are the children doing today? Give me a thumbs up if you're doing good, kind of a so-so if you're still sleeping. How are we doing today? Okay, a lot of so-sos. It's the morning service. It's the early service. Thank you for being here today. So as Vadim was saying, we don't have a lot of time today, but as Vadim was saying, we are going to start a new series talking about biblical heroes. So there's a lot of heroes. We sat in the room and we named a lot of heroes. So May, we're going to talk about Joseph. How many of you know who Joseph was in Genesis? Sold by his brothers, became ruler of Egypt. You guys all know that story. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Joseph. So today I'm going to preach in the morning about Joseph, kind of giving you a character profile of him, and then kind of a lesson that we can take from Joseph, because the whole month we're just going to be talking about Joseph. And then if you want to come back in the evening, I will also be talking about Joseph, but a more deep dive of Joseph. And it's going to be a lot more detailed and more scripture about Joseph. Okay, so who was Joseph? Let's spend some time looking at Joseph here. So Joseph was the 11th born. So he was born in the old age of his father, and he was his favorite. He was his father's favorite child. How many of you are your parents' favorite children? A few. I see one very confident. He knows. There's no doubt he's the favorite child. Well, you see, Joseph was born, he was one of the youngest sons. And how I see it is the younger kids always get a little more favor because they're younger. And I can relate to that, okay? I can relate to that. So we know that Joseph was loved the most by his father. And then if we open up to Genesis 37:3, it really opens up to us. I'm going to go ahead and just read it really fast. It said, "Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him." So his father loved him the most, and he created this robe for him. He gave him special treatment. Now think about having a lot of brothers and sisters. What's the one thing that does not work well in your favor when you get special treatment? Different, right? The idea is your parents should treat all of you very similar. And so when one person gets special treatment, like we see Joseph here, he got a robe. He got, everyone was looking at him, his brothers. Why did he get the robe? Why didn't I get it? So what did the brothers do? The brothers did not like him at all. And a few places in Genesis, we see that the brothers despised him. Everything that he said, they hated. And so one day, when he was 17, right, Joseph developed a habit of spying on his brothers. So what's worse than not being liked when someone doesn't trust you? And so Joseph's brothers would always go out in the fields and they would work. And Joseph would watch his brothers, and then he would go back to his father and report to them what they did bad, what they were up to. So they didn't like that at all. He was kind of like looking at them and then running to his father, telling him. And so they also didn't like him for that. And so we know that later on, Joseph's brothers, they conspired to kill him. We know that. That's the worst thing they could do. They didn't dislike Joseph so much that they wanted to end his life. And luckily that did not happen. We know that a caravan was coming by and the brothers sold Joseph to them for 20 shekels. 20 shekels. Now, when I heard this number, I started thinking, 20 shekels, that doesn't sound like much. So I researched 20 shekels. What is selling someone for 20 shekels? And so I found two different sources, and they said that silver coins were shekels, and that they were about equal to the American silver dollar, which is worth about $10 today. And so 20 pieces would be worth $200 in today's time. So his brothers sold Joseph for about $200. Another source said about $150, looking at jumping it from an ounce, converting it. So $150. So they sold their brother, their younger brother. They didn't like him that much for $150, $200, which is about the price of some new headphones. A new phone even costs more than $200. But they sold their brother for that. So there's a little bit about Joseph. So I'm only going to talk about the beginning, the early life of Joseph. I'm not going to go into the middle and the end because I'm going to leave that for the other preachers. But one lesson that we can take from Joseph that I wanted to share with you all today, church, is that no matter what circumstance Joseph was in, And he was in a lot of them. He was sold as a slave. He became a prisoner. He became ruler of Egypt, second in command to only the Pharaoh. There's one thing that he always did, and he always used his blessings and his gifts in the toughest times that he's had in his life to serve others and to bless others. So I want to give you guys a few examples. I'm not going to go too deep into them. So as a slave in Egypt, Joseph used his blessings and gifts to help out. We know that he was a slave and he was bought, and his master liked him so much. He was doing so well, and he was serving so well and helping out that the master was prospering. It says that everything that he was doing, his fields, he was very prosperous with Joseph. And so he decided to put him in command. And then in Genesis 39, it says that he was put in charge of the master's home, everything in it. And then also we know as a prisoner, we know later on there was something with the master's wife. I'm not going to go into too much detail, and he was put into prison. So even as a prisoner, Joseph wanted to help out. So in Genesis chapter 40, verse 6 to 7, it said that Joseph came to the next morning. He saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody. So Pharaoh sent 2 of his officials to prison, and Joseph was sent to prison too by the master. And so they were in there together. And we know that Joseph began kind of promoting in the prison, and the warden made him in charge of the prison. And so Joseph would even approach the other prisoners. He would serve them. He wanted to help them out. And he said, "You look so sad today. What's going on? Tell me what's going on. You look very sad today." And we know that they had bad dreams. And he said, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So he's using his gifts. He's using the talent that he has to these prisoners. And he's saying, "Tell me your dreams. See if I can interpret them." And to me, this is very interesting. This is a good lesson for us, because as a prisoner, when you're a prisoner, you are at the lowest of your life. You're not happy to be there. No one is happy to be a prisoner. But even as a prisoner, he didn't just wake up, eat, go to sleep, wake up, eat, go to sleep. He wanted to serve others. He knew that God was working in his life, and he wanted to serve others. He wanted to use the blessings, the gifts that God gave him to help out others. And so I want to give us a little application. We don't have a lot of time. I'm going to wrap up here. So in our worst circumstances, now you might be sitting here thinking, "Oleg, I'm a kid. I'll be honest. I'm not a prisoner, right? I'm not a slave. As a child, how do I help someone out? As a 5-year-old, as a 7-year-old, as a 10-year-old, maybe you might be a teenager, maybe you might be an adult sitting here thinking, how can I help someone out? Well, we know that Joseph didn't have much when he was a slave, and he wanted to help out others and serve others. As a prisoner, he wanted to help out others. He wanted to serve others. So as a child, I thought of some application. I love application because I think that's how we are true Christians, when we go out and we apply these things in our lives. So some of you might face bad days. You might be tired sometimes. I know when I come home from work, I'm really tired. Maybe you had a really bad day. Things weren't going your way as a child. Maybe your friends at school, maybe your teacher gave you a bad grade. But instead of closing down and not wanting to talk to anyone, still be a blessing to others. Still serve others. So that's how we can apply it in our lives. So this week, I always want to set a challenge for this upcoming week. So this week, children, when you go out and you have a really bad day, maybe your parents do something and they get you very angry, or maybe you're annoyed, maybe you got a bad grade, maybe you're hungry, maybe you have a broken leg, maybe you have a broken arm, and you think, how can I still serve? Well, Joseph didn't have much either, but he still managed to find a way. And today we have communion up here. As you guys know, once a month we have communion. And so I was thinking about Jesus last night, and I was thinking about how was he serving us? What kind of examples do we have in his life from when he was not going through the best time of his life? And I found one Bible verse that came to my mind. So it's in Luke 23:34, and I'm going to wrap up with this right here. We know that Jesus was crucified. We know that he was spit on. We know that he was tortured. We know that a crown was put on his head with thorns on it. We know that people were laughing at him. We know that the guards down below him were gambling for his clothes. Who was going to take the clothes? We know all of those things. And in the midst of all that, Jesus was on the cross, and he was in pain. He was in agony. He was taking his final breaths. And what did he say? To me, this was just amazing. He said in Luke 23:34, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Wow. In the midst of everything that was going on in his life at that time, crucified, in pain, people laughing at him, he still said, "Father, please forgive them." He still wanted to serve us, and he still wanted to advocate for all of us in our lives. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and pray. Keep in mind, this whole month we're going to be talking about Joseph, and there are many lessons we can get. So this week, I want you guys to think about how you can serve others, even when you're not in the best of times, okay? I'm just going to pray today because we don't have a lot of time. Let's go ahead and bow our heads. Amen.